zero trust is really about one key idea. Trust no one or anything and verify everything, right? So there should be no implicit trust given when accessing resources within our organizations. And it really doesn't matter if a user or asset is inside the network or is remote. Every request really should be treated with suspicion. And so as you can see on the diagram here on the left, kind of a traditional single perimeter defense, kind of the legacy thinking that we operated for many, many decades, actually, where kind of castle moat perspective, with that perimeter being your trust zone. And zero trust is a change of approach in that, yes, we still might have perimeters, but really we're not trying to protect from a single perimeter because that's just not how things work today. And so we really, look at it we're not looking at a single trust zone anymore. So what is it in plain English? You may have heard, never trust, always verify, and assume breach. Those are kind of the two key phrases, so to speak, that we associate to zero trust nowadays. And this model is really built for the world that we live in now, right? It's cloud first, remote work, APIs are everywhere. And you'll notice in zero trust documentation and whatnot that words such as continuous and monitor and measure are key and are frequently used. An example is NIST in their 7 zero trust tenants, for example. And that's because zero trust isn't about a one-time check. It's really about ongoing verification across all of our assets and systems. And the pillars to zero trust include, identity, devices, networks, applications and workloads, and data as seen in the diagram here. And, that comes from the CISA Zero Trust Maturity Model, which is a great resource. If you haven't checked that out, there's lots of resources out there now, but this is really what it's about is, how can we address these key points in a way that makes us more secure. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit more, but there's also some foundational items too that kind of span across all these pillars as well that come into play. And so with zero trust, there's also zero trust architecture, and ZTA, focuses on really protecting resources from the inside out, which again is a bit of a change in the thinking that needs to happen. And zero trust it's not just a security trend anymore. It really is becoming a core part of enterprise layered defenses. And by taking this inside to outside perspective, here in the diagram, you kind of see a single asset, and you really are looking at it asset by asset. You can look at it groups of assets too, depending on, how those are interacting or and what their purpose is. But, ultimately, we're assuming that there is a breach in our environment, and by looking inside out, we're making sure that, okay, if there is a breach, how am I layering in this, zero trust capability to protect my individual assets also from one another? And why is this the case? Because really the old perimeter is gone. Devices, users, and workloads now exist outside traditional boundaries. And also we know from lots of experience and headlines and that attacks spread from the inside. And so zero trust really is a strategy, not technology, but a strategy that is about addressing this reality, and really has, positive proven impact, especially around, reducing blast radius. So if you do have an incident, how is that contained? Incident response times as well, being able to do that quickly, and then ultimately, reducing breach cost. But when you're considering a zero trust initiative, it's really important that a business case describing the reasons and the justification for a proposed investment in zero trust is created. There's rarely a sufficient connection between a security investment and revenue generation for an organization to make the calculation and the financial metrics such as ROI actually be practical. Instead, what needs to be focused on is, that business case that helps to show a reduction in the total cost of ownership, and or by enabling zero trust to be a driver of business value. And so here, is some examples of what those values can be from a zero trust perspective to your organization when you're trying to build the case to justify, the implementation and the resource costs that are involved in approaching it and implementing. And then 5-step implementation process here, using the Cloud Security Alliance is one example. And this one's, specific to small and mid-sized businesses, but really I think it applies across the board. And, number one is, starting out, you have to understand, where your assets are, what they are, and really doing a full assessment of that. Everything should be known within your organization, wherever that lives within the organization. But number two is understanding the business and technology, right? Like, how do these assets fit into how the business works? What's the importance level, and how does that technology enable the business? And when you really understand that, you start to gain a better understanding and feel of how zero trust is going to be beneficial to your specific organization. 3, designing the zero trust strategy. Again, it's a strategy, but as a part of that strategy, then you follow on with implementing, which usually involves the technology and people and process and things like that. But also don't forget, the last one is, once you do implement, you do have to have a capability to monitor, maintain, and make that zero trust strategy effective for your environment. And again, another really great resource is Microsoft's Zero Trust Deployment Plan for M365, just fairly recently released, as another good resource just to see how they address the zero trust approach, especially with the wide adoption of the Microsoft 365 platform. So for all the benefits that zero trust brings, and how the mentality is shifting, there also are weaknesses, and it's important that we understand what some of the weaknesses are. Today, I'm going to highlight some, these specific ones, but by understanding and acknowledging that there are some weaknesses, that helps us be able to address them and think about them when we're looking at zero trust, implementing zero trust and zero trust architecture. So what I specifically want to highlight today, mostly these items shown here have one thing in common that's core to security, cybersecurity, security, and that is integrity. It's one of the core pillars of security, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. However, zero trust principles specifically call out that all assets should be monitored and measured for integrity, meaning that you're able to verify that your assets have not changed in unexpected ways, and that they're doing only what you believe and expect that they should be doing. And one example of this is traditional endpoint security solutions are no longer sufficient in and of themselves in doing this integrity capability. They can help, and there's lots of value that they do provide. in that. But what we're going to talk about today, you'll see more clearly what I mean. So how do we address these weaknesses and strengthen zero trust from this perspective is what we're going to be talking about today. And really the crux of it is about integrity. Getting a win in zero trust. Zero trust can be daunting. It doesn't have to be. You can kind of eat the elephant, so to speak, a piece at a time. But a lot of times we find, or I, just from my background, I know that there's a lot of legacy architectures out there, legacy implementations and whatnot. And so a lot of people that are looking at zero trust initiatives, it's a little overwhelming because they have to go through redesign, re-architectures, and that can take a lot of time, money, and resources. And in a lot of cases, they may be very difficult for them to do that, and it may take them a long time to implement zero trust. One of the wins that I would say is relatively easy is implementing an integrity type solution like Invary has, because you're not having to redesign. It works with whatever your existing architecture is, and it's addressing something very foundational that's increasingly becoming important in security and protecting our systems. And you don't have to worry about rip and replace, right? So it's an additive capability that can be layered into wherever you're at today in your zero trust journey, but it's going to significantly improve the zero trust principles of whatever your deployment is, even if you're not intentionally meaning to do something zero trust. And so that's why, I kind of call it a zero trust win, because you can actually improve the security posture of your environment wherever you're at in your phase of security architecture and enhancing that, because that's a continuous process.